This is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba for another technical diving tips, techniques, and trips video.
Hello divers. As some of you know, over the last year or so, I have been experimenting with the concept of independent back-mounted doubles. In January of 2022, I was finally able to make a trip overseas to Bonaire, where I was able to test many of the concepts that I had tested locally here in the United States, in Texas and in Florida. This video is going to discuss some of the refinements, actually minor evolutionary developments that I have experimented with as a result of using independent back-mounted doubles over this time period.
What I started out with was an original philosophy for the worst case situation. And the worst case situation is when you are at a destination and all that is available to you is standard right-hand K-valve tanks. So the original philosophy in this situation was to try to take a set of manifolded double regulators and to minimize the configuration changes that it would allow you to use them with independent back-mounted tanks that had right-hand K-valves. This image is a set of independent doubles on a dock in Bonaire. And what we have here is the right-hand tank configured normally and the left-hand tank reversed 180 degrees so that there was access to the tank valve in case that was needed. So this configuration resulted in my desire to keep the right-hand post regulator set in its original condition. Because the left post regulator is backwards, there needs to be some adjustment in the position of the hoses in the regulator. A side of the regulator sticking out on the back of the tank, even though it's flush with the side of the tank. I believe that one of the objectionable things had to do with the high pressure hose that is leading from the back of the tank to the front of the tank to your D-ring where it would be secured. So the original configuration did meet the requirement that the minimal number of changes be made to the system in order to work with independent back-mount doubles, but it did leave some objectionable aspects to the particular configuration. So one of the objectives, since the original configuration was determined, is to make the system a little bit more friendly. So that leads me to the current philosophy for worst case situations. And so now what the objective is to spend a little more time reconfiguring the components so that you maximize aesthetics and maximize safety while still considering the standard technical configuration. So if you're switching back and forth between regular manifolded diving and independent doubles diving, this is going to require a little bit more effort on your part with respect to changing the position of the hoses on the regulators. Here is an image of the current configuration that I'm using for the back-mount independent double system. So the right-hand valve is actually on your left-hand side, and the left-hand valve, which is backwards, is on your right-hand side. The pressure gauge hose for the right-hand tank is on the left-hand side of the image, just in front of the valve knob. There is actually adequate clearance for the right-hand valve handle knob, as the regulator itself on the right-hand post does project out in front of the valve. What you can also not see clearly in this photo is the mechanism for the pressure for the left-hand valve, which is on the right-hand side of the image. In this case, there is a transmitter on a 6-inch hose, which is out of view behind the tank valve. Since we have two independent tanks here, the normal left post pressure gauge technical diving standard does not really apply. You do have the ability to check the pressure for both tanks with this system. With the right hand post, you are using the analog gauge, and with the left hand post, you are using the transmitter. So this is actually opposite of what I would use with a standard manifold configuration. This new regulator and hose configuration provides a much cleaner execution than the original approach. Another minor development involves the 4 tank bands used to secure the cylinders to the backplate. Originally, both the upper and lower tank bands were 2-piece tank bands that you would have to fit together and then close the clamp. And on the Bonaire trip, I discovered that it was much easier to have 2 one-piece bands for the lower bands and 2 two-piece bands for the upper bands. This allowed me to rest the 2 tanks on the ground and then position the 2 one-piece tank bands over the top of the 2 tanks, and then clamp the upper bands after I had secured the lower tank bands. Here's an image of the top and bottom tank bands on one side. So at the top we have the tank band, the 2-piece tank band that can be separated, and then on the bottom we have the 1-piece tank band. The question might arise as to why there aren't 2 or 4 one-piece tank bands. And that's because on most trips I also dive a single tank, and with the single tank adapter it's easier to use 2-piece tank bands. So I normally use an upper and lower 2-piece tank band on my single tank adapter. Another tank band issue which I have learned is it is best to install the tank bands so that the buckle is closest to the wing and closes toward the back of the tank. This allows each buckle to be closed easily without interfering with the other tank. It also allows the excess tank band to be easily secured. As I anticipated, one of the great benefits of diving independent backmount doubles was the ease of acquiring tanks. On the Bonaire trip, I used Dive Friends to provide the tanks. In prior trips to Bonaire, where I used manifolded backmount doubles, I would have to seek out a fill station in order to refill the tanks. So on this trip, rather than having to find a fill station and wait till my tanks were filled, I could go to one of the many tank stations located all over the island. This was far more convenient and maximized my diving time. Like side mount, one of the big advantages to independent doubles diving is the ability to access very difficult shore sites. This is an image of a shore diving site in Bonaire called Bachelor's Beach. And the upper part where the people are standing is approximately 10 to 15 feet above the actual sand. So in order to get down this, you have to walk on a set of stairs and then a couple of rocks in order to get down to the sand. And I have seen people do this successfully with single tanks, single back-mounted tanks. But this is not something that I would like to attempt with a set of back-mount doubles. So this is a site where the independent doubles becomes very handy because you can carry the tanks down one at a time, or you can take the tanks down at the same time with one in each hand, and you can wear your BCD. Once you have climbed down onto the sand, then you can go ahead and set up your independent double back mount system, and it is a very easy process to drag your rig into the water and float it and then put it on in the water. Independent doubles are also very easy to use from a dock. I would assemble the set of independent back mount doubles right there on the dock next to the steps. So all that I would have to do is sit down, strap myself in, and fall into the water. Last year, I actually dislocated my shoulder attempting to climb off of a boat with a low tide with a set of manifolded Backmount Doubles on that I was wearing. As it turned out, there was a gigantic last step, and as I started climbing up the last step, I started to fall down, and they grabbed me by my arms and promptly dislocated one of my shoulders. You don't have this problem when you're diving with independent Backmount Doubles, because you can hand the tanks up one at a time like all the other tanks on the boat. Once you're on the boat, you can generally assemble your set of back-mount independent doubles in the same way that everyone else who's diving single back-mount tanks are assembling their gear. The one thing you need to possibly worry about is if there are fixed tank holders, you might have to make accommodations for that. So those are some of the minor developments and things that I've learned over the last year or so of diving with independent back-mount doubles. This is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba. I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching.